You ever have one of those days where you realize the world around you has lost its mind? Like the rules you thought everyone respected suddenly don't matter anymore? That's exactly how this all started for me. One quiet morning on my back porch, coffee in hand, watching the sunlight dance across the lake my family has loved for 3 generations. And then seeing strangers dragging folding chairs onto my shoreline like it was their backyard. 60 of them, 60. And they swore they had every right to be there. But to understand how insane that moment was, you've got to understand where it began. My name's Ethan Carter. My grandfather bought this land back in the 1950s, when this area was nothing but woods and dirt roads. 50 acres of peace and space, passed down to my dad and then to me when he passed 5 years ago. At the heart of it all is Carter Lake, 8 acres of clear water fed by an underground spring, surrounded by pines and wildflowers. It's where I learned to fish, where we held summer reunions, where my kids now catch frogs and skip rocks. It's not just property to me. It's part of my family's story. For decades, life out here was quiet. My closest neighbors were half a mile away, and they respected my land the way I respected theirs. But about 4 years back, the quiet cracked. A developer bought the parcel next to mine and started carving up the fields into neat half-acre lots. Nothing wrong with that. People need homes, and the folks who moved in were friendly enough at first. We'd wave from our driveways, chat about the weather. They called their new community Lakeside Estates, which made me laugh because they didn't own a single inch of the lake. But as the houses filled and the neighborhood grew, something else started taking shape, a homeowners association. And with it came a creeping sense that my peace was about to get tested. At first, it was little things. A couple walking their dog wandered a bit too close to the lake's edge. Kids built a rope swing on one of my trees. I shrugged it off. Kids being kids. But then came the Saturday morning that changed everything. I looked up from my coffee to see a woman I'd never met setting up tables in a grill right on my shore. Balloons, a cake, the whole birthday party setup. I walked down, calm but firm. "Excuse me," I said. "This is private property. You're on my land." She looked at me like I'd grown 2 heads. "Oh, you must be mistaken. This is community property. I'm on the HOA board. We've designated this as a recreational area for residents." I actually laughed, thinking it had to be a misunderstanding. "Ma'am, I own this land, all of it. The lake and everything around it. I've got the deed to prove it." She crossed her arms and smirked. "Sir, I don't know who told you that, but you're wrong. The HOA did a property survey. This lake is part of our common area. If you're a resident, you should have gotten the documentation." "I'm not a resident," I said slowly, pointing up the hill toward my house. "My property predates this subdivision by about 70 years. "Look, I don't have time to argue with you," she snapped. "We reserved this space for my daughter's birthday through proper channels. If you have a problem, contact the HOA. That's when I stopped playing nice. Ma'am, pack up your things and leave. Right now." She grabbed her phone. "I'm calling the police." "This is harassment." "Go ahead," I said. "I'll be happy to show them the deed." 20 minutes later, a sheriff's deputy showed up. I explained everything, showed him my paperwork. The deputy turned to her. "Ma'am, this is private property. You need to leave or I'll have to cite you for trespassing." She went ballistic, shouting about surveys and documentation. But in the end, she packed up her party. As she left, she glared at me and hissed, "This isn't over." And she was right. It was just beginning. Over the next few weeks, the letters started coming. The first was addressed to HOA resident and laid out new community guidelines for lake use. No loud music after 9 p.m., reserved time slots for events, pick up trash. I tossed it in the trash. The next one came addressed to me personally, claiming their research confirmed the lake was community property and I needed to stop interfering. I called the number on the letter and ended up talking to that same woman. Her name was Tiffany. "Oh, it's you," she said like I was a mosquito buzzing in her ear. "We know what we're talking about. That lake has been used by the community for years. It's been used by my family for 70, I replied. "And I have the deed." "Deeds can be wrong," she snapped. "Our lawyers say we have community rights." "Then your lawyers are idiots," I said flatly. "And if people keep trespassing, I'll call the police every single time." Do that, she said and hung up. The letters kept coming, more aggressive now, threatening legal action and accusing me of interfering with community rights. One even said I was grandfathered in as a lake user but couldn't stop others from accessing it. That's when I decided to go on the offensive. I hired a property attorney and had him send a cease and desist letter. I posted private property, no trespassing signs around the shoreline, and then the signs started disappearing. Every time I replaced them, they vanished again, sometimes within a day. Then the HOA started sending letters calling my signs illegal and accusing me of vandalizing community property. That was the last straw. I filed a police report for trespassing and theft. A deputy named Walker came out, walked the property lines with me, reviewed my deed, and advised me to set up cameras. So I did. Trail cams, motion-activated, night vision. Within a week, I had crystal-clear footage of Tiffany and 2 other HOA board members ripping my signs out of the ground. I had video of families swimming, fishing, picnicking, even dumping trash and beer cans. I turned the footage over to Deputy Walker, who helped me identify people and file charges. I figured that would scare them off. I was wrong. Instead, they doubled down. Their attorney started sending me certified letters demanding I cease harassment and threatening to sue for interference with community rights. My lawyer laughed when I showed him. They don't have a leg to stand on, he said. If they want a lawsuit, let's give them one. But before we could even file, they made their boldest move yet. One Friday evening, I was grilling dinner on the porch when I heard the sound of cars pulling up. A lot of cars. I walked down toward the lake and nearly dropped my tongs. There were rows of folding chairs, a podium, a microphone, even a registration table. 60 people were gathered by the water. I approached a woman at the table. "What's going on?" "Oh, this is the quarterly HOA meeting," she said brightly. "All residents should have gotten the notice." "This is my private property," I said slowly. "You can't hold a meeting here." She looked confused and called someone over. And of course, here came Tiffany, walking toward me with that sour expression like she'd bitten into a lemon. "What do you want, Ethan?" "I want to know why you're holding a meeting on my land without permission." "This is community property," she declared loudly so everyone could hear. "We've been over this." "You don't own this lake." Now dozens of people were watching. Tiffany raised her voice. "This man thinks he owns community property and has been harassing residents. We've tried to work with him, but he continues to interfere with community activities." I could feel their eyes on me, full of judgment. So I raised my voice too. "Folks, listen up. This is private property. I own this land and the lake. I have the deed to prove it." "You're trespassing." Tiffany rolled her eyes theatrically. "He's been saying that for months." "Our lawyers have confirmed this is community land." "Then you won't mind if I call the sheriff," I said, pulling out my phone. "Go ahead," she sneered. "We're not doing anything wrong, so I did." I called 911 and explained that 60 people were trespassing on my land and holding an unauthorized gathering. And while we waited for the deputies, Tiffany carried on with the meeting like nothing was happening, talking about budgets, upcoming events, glaring at me between sentences. 20 minutes later, 3 sheriff's vehicles rolled up. Deputy Walker stepped out and walked over to me first. "This is your property?" he asked. "Yep," I said. "And I did not give permission for this." He nodded and walked toward Tiffany at the podium. "Ma'am, I need a word." The meeting stopped cold. Tiffany and a couple board members walked over. "This gentleman says you're on his property without permission," Walker said. "This is community property," Tiffany insisted. "We've been through this. He doesn't own this land." "Ma'am, I've seen his deed," Walker said. "This is definitely his property. You and everyone else here are trespassing." "Our lawyer told us." "I don't know what your lawyer told you," Walker cut in, "but this is private property. You all need to pack up and leave immediately." "This is ridiculous," Tiffany shouted. "We're not leaving. This is our community space. Ma'am, if you don't leave voluntarily, I will have to arrest you." That got their attention. People started folding up chairs, heading for their cars. Within half an hour, most were gone, except Tiffany and a handful of diehards. "I'm calling our lawyer," one muttered. "You can call whoever you want," Walker replied, "but do it somewhere else." Eventually, even Tiffany stormed off. "This isn't over," she spat. "We're going to sue you for everything you're worth." I watched their taillights fade down the road, adrenaline still pounding through my chest. And I knew she meant it, but so did I. The night after that chaotic meeting ended, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying every smug word Tiffany had thrown at me, every condescending letter, every stolen sign. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was a calculated attempt to take what didn't belong to them. And for the first time, I started thinking not just about protecting my property, but about making them regret ever setting foot on it. The next morning, I called my lawyer and laid everything out. The trespassing, the harassment, the theft, the unauthorized meeting, all of it. He was silent for a long moment on the other end. Then he said, "Ethan, this isn't a neighbor dispute anymore. This is a full-blown legal assault on your property rights, and we're going to hit them back twice as hard." Within a week, we filed a comprehensive lawsuit against Lakeside Estates HOA and several individual board members, Tiffany included. The charges: trespassing, theft, harassment, intentional interference with property rights, and unjust enrichment. We asked for damages, punitive penalties, attorney's fees, and a permanent injunction preventing them from ever stepping foot on my land again. It hit them like a freight train. My attorney later told me their lawyer called less than 24 hours after being served, practically begging to discuss a settlement. But I refused. I didn't want a check and a half-hearted apology. I wanted a courtroom. I wanted a judge to look at the evidence and say in no uncertain terms that what they'd done was wrong. Discovery was brutal for them. We subpoenaed their records and internal communications, and what we uncovered was jaw-dropping. They had never, not once, conducted any legitimate legal research on the lake. Tiffany hadn't consulted a single property attorney. The survey she'd cited, it didn't exist. It turned out she'd simply decided the lake belonged to the HOA and convinced everyone else to go along with it. The emails were even worse. One message between board members openly admitted they believed I owned the property, but they were hoping that if they used it openly for long enough, they could claim ownership through adverse possession. Tiffany herself wrote one email saying, "Even if he technically owns it, if we use it long enough, we can probably claim it legally. My cousin's a paralegal, and she says possession is 9/10 of the law." When my lawyer read that, he smiled like a wolf. They just handed us the case on a silver platter. The depositions were a disaster for the HOA. Tiffany came across as arrogant and combative, contradicting herself multiple times. When asked if she had ever looked at my deed, she admitted she hadn't. When asked if she had consulted legal professionals before declaring the lake community property, she said no. And when asked why she felt she had the right to host meetings on my land, her answer was, because the community needed the space and he wasn't using it. The arrogance was staggering, and the judge saw it too. 8 months after filing, the case finally went to trial. It wasn't a jury trial, just a judge. The HOA's lawyer tried to paint the whole thing as an innocent misunderstanding, arguing they had acted in good faith. But the evidence told a different story. The videos of them ripping out my signs, the emails proving they knew they were trespassing, the testimony about the unauthorized meeting. It was overwhelming. The judge didn't mince words in his ruling. He found the HOA and its board members guilty of willful trespassing, theft, harassment, and intentional interference with property rights. Then he laid down the hammer. They were ordered to pay me $45,000 in actual damages, the fair rental value of lake access over the time they'd been using it. Another $25,000 in punitive damages for their blatant disregard of the law. $30,000 more in attorney's fees. And most importantly, he issued a permanent injunction forbidding anyone affiliated with the HOA from entering my property again. But the most satisfying part? The judge ruled that because their actions were willful and in bad faith, the individual board members, including Tiffany, were personally liable for the damages. They couldn't dip into HOA funds or insurance. They had to pay out of pocket. The fallout was glorious. Within 2 months, Tiffany and her husband had put their home on the market to pay their share of the judgment. 2 other board members followed. The HOA's finances collapsed because their insurance refused to cover intentional misconduct. Then in the final blow, several homeowners sued the board for mismanagement and breach of fiduciary duty. Within a year, Lakeside Estates HOA was dissolved entirely. The same people who once stood on my shoreline acting like they owned the place didn't even have a board to speak for them anymore. And as if poetic justice hadn't gone far enough, life decided to twist the knife. About 6 months after the judgment, I got a call from a real estate developer. Apparently, all the legal drama had tarnished the neighborhood's reputation, and property values had tanked. He was looking to buy up several lots for rental properties and wanted to talk to me about leasing lake access for a private fishing club. Lease, I repeated, half smiling. Not buy? Just lease, he said. $50,000 a year. I accepted without hesitation. The same lake they tried to steal from me was now going to generate $50,000 a year. Legally, on my terms. Looking back, the whole thing still feels surreal. These people tried to rewrite reality, to take what wasn't theirs simply because they believed they could. They lied, they trespassed, they bullied, and they escalated every time the law didn't go their way. And in the end, they lost everything, their homes, their HOA, their dignity. It taught me something about people, how entitlement can rot common sense, how power can warp judgment, how far some folks will go when they think no one's willing to fight back. But it also reminded me of something deeper, that the law still means something when you're willing to stand your ground. Now, every time I sit on my porch and watch the sunset dance across Carter Lake, I feel that quiet satisfaction, not just because I won, but because I never let them steal what generations of my family built. And knowing that Tiffany is probably driving past every day, forced to look at a lake she once claimed as hers, that's a victory money can't buy. So here's my question to you. If 60 people showed up on your land insisting it was theirs, would you fight back like I did? Or would you try to keep the peace and compromise? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you draw the line between being neighborly and standing your ground. 'Cause in the end, that line is the only thing protecting what's rightfully yours.